Hello and welcome to this wonderful lecture in anthropology. This lecture is about Australopithecus. Australopithecus. This has nothing to do with Australia. In Greek, Australo means southern and Pithecus means ape. Australo means southern and Pithecus means ape. So Australopithecus means the southern ape, the ape from the southern hemisphere. Australopithecus includes a collection of hominid species. Hominid. We human beings belong to the family Hominidae and superfamily Hominidae. Okay? So Australopithecus includes a collection of hominid species which lived roughly between 4 to 2 million years. And it is considered that we human beings got evolved from or descended from the Australopithecus. That means Australopithecus were our human ancestor. They were our ancestors. So how we can prove that one ape which lived a few million years ago, how we assume that it is our ancestor? This is based on a number of anatomical similarities, a number of anatomical features. So about this later we will discuss in the phylogenetic position of Australopithecus. So these Australopithecus were bipedal. They were terrestrial and they had a large jaw meant for biting and chewing. And in this lecture, let us discuss about the following things. About the discovery of Australopithecus. The very famous discovery of this Thayung baby, a Thayung child, the discovery of Lucy, discovery of Eridi. Then let us discuss about the anatomical features of Australopithecus, its anatomical descriptions, the cephalic features, post-cephalic features. Then the locomotion. As I told you earlier, Australopithecus were bipedal, they were terrestrial. But though they were bipedal, the way in which they walked on the earth was slightly different from the way in which we human beings used to walk. We call it as jog-trot-like walk. So what is that type of locomotion? And then finally, the phylogenetic position of Australopithecus. So by phylogenetic position, we discuss how and why we place this group of fossils in the line of human evolution. So what are all the anatomical features which very clearly shows that yes, these fossils were or these hominids were in the line of human evolution. We descended from these fossils, from these apes. That we will discuss in the phylogenetic position of Australopithecus. And then right, I will also be introducing you to a number of anatomical terms which are very much important in understanding these human ancestors, these primates. Okay, fine. So first let us discuss about the discovery of Australopithecus. In the year 1925, in fact, the year 1924 it happened. Few workers were working in a limestone quarry at a place called Thayung near Johannesburg in South Africa. They discovered one fossil of a small baby. And it went to a number of places, it was displayed at many places, and finally it reached Raymond Dart through his student. His student found it somewhere in a home, and she thought that yeah, this particular thing should be a very important fossil, and she brought it to Raymond Dart, the very famous paleoanthropologist who was then working among the number of fossils. It was the fossil of a small baby. Raymond Dart, he named this after studying it. After studying the anatomical features of the fossil thoroughly, in a matter of 4 months, he came to a conclusion that yes, this is a very important fossil and this should be our human ancestor. And he named this fossil as Australopithecus africanus. That is the southern ape from Africa. Then Raymond Dart, he published a number of papers about this Australopithecus africanus, and he assumed that Australopithecus africanus should be in the line of human evolution. But this particular assumption by, or this particular conclusion by Raymond Dart was debated in length, because during those times we didn't have much of anatomical evidences or number of similar fossils to show that yes, this Australopithecus was in the line of human evolution. So it was very much debated, but later with a number of subsequent discoveries, there were a number of subsequent species of Australopithecus which were discovered from Africa. And based on those evidences, right, those fossils gave us ample evidence or sufficient evidence to show that Australopithecus were in the line of human evolution, that we human beings have descended from Australopithecus. So this fossil baby was very famously named as Thayung baby or Thayung child by Raymond Dart. Raymond Dart. So the next important discovery, it happened some 10 years after the discovery of this Thayung baby. Professor Robert Brown, he discovered one adult cranium at a place called as Sterkfontein in South Africa. Sterkfontein in South Africa. So this is an adult fossil, but he managed to discover only some broken parts of the adult cranium. So what do you mean by cranium? Cranium. So cranium refers to the collection of few bones which surrounds or which envelops the human brain. It is not a single piece of bone. There are a number of bones which makes the cranium. So cranium refers to a collection of bone which covers the human brain. So there are a number of bones, as I told you. The most importantly, the frontal one, parietal, occipital, this one is temporal, this bone is sphenoid, and this blue color one is the ethmoid. So there are a number of bones here, but there is no need to remember each and every bone here. And even cranium I told you cranium is a bony envelope which surrounds, which envelopes human brain. It is composed of a number of important bones, most importantly the frontal, parietal, occipital, this temporal, the one sphenoid, and the ethmoid bone. The ethmoid bone will be there inside the eyes here. And in anthropology, that too in evolutionary perspective, it is sufficient if you are comfortable with these three bones: frontal, parietal, occipital. If you are comfortable with this, that is more than sufficient. There is no need to worry even about the temporal bone, the sphenoid, the ethmoid. Please do not bother. Please do not worry. If you are comfortable with these three, it is sufficient: frontal, parietal, and occipital. Okay, so are you okay with the cranium, the term cranium? So cranium refers to a collection of bones which covers the human brain. And in evolutionary perspective or in anthropological perspective, it is sufficient that if you can remember these three bones of the cranium: the frontal, the parietal, and the occipital. So do not bother much about the temporal bone here, the sphenoid, and the ethmoid bone. There's no need to worry about these bones. Okay. So as we discussed, Robert Brown, he discovered one adult cranium from Sterkfontein in South Africa. Then subsequently there were a number of other discoveries. Most importantly, the discovery of Lucy by Donald Johnson. Lucy is called as the mother of Earth, we have called as grandmother. Grandmother of humankind. Grandmother of humankind. So close to around 47 bones were recovered. So the first time, right, we managed to find a huge collection of bones of Australopithecus. And in fact, Lucy was the first human ancestor in which we managed to find at least 40% of the skeletal remains. She is our Lucy, the grandmother of humankind. And why the name Lucy? So it was discovered in the year 1974, and so mainly in the Afar region of Ethiopia. So it was during this time one song was very famous, sung by the rock band Beatles. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. They used to play this song repeatedly in the tents, it seems. The Afar region of Ethiopia, where they were doing some excavation or paleoanthropologist. And once when the fossil was discovered, they were so happy to name it as Lucy. And there are a number of research which followed this particular excavation, and many anthropologists did a lot of work in Lucy. And we even managed to find that how Lucy died. So majority of the opinion says that Lucy died due to a fall from a tree. You don't know why she climbed the tree, and she fell from the tree, and she died because of the injuries which she had sustained during the fall. Lucy. Then there was one more important discovery, that is, it was originally named as Australopithecus. Australopithecus ramidus. But see, this fossil was discovered in the year 1992 to 94. This fossil was discovered from the Aramis region of Ethiopia. But this fossil was slightly older, actually, some 5 million years old. And the cranial capacity was very minimum. The cranial capacity was somewhere around 300 to 330 cubic centimeter. Cranial capacity. So by cranial capacity, we refer to the size of the cranium. We refer to the size of the cranium. So this is very small. For most of the other Australopithecus, right, cranial capacity used to be around 400 to 600 cc at least. 400 to 600 cc. But it is something unusually less. And there were some other differences also. As a result, right, within a matter of 2 or 3 years, Australopithecus ramidus was renamed as Australopithecus ramidus. Eridi means ground or floor. Pithecus, Pithecus means ape. Ramidus or rami means root. All in Greek. Okay. So the fossil was renamed as Australopithecus, and it is still believed that Australopithecus ramidus was an ancestor to Australopithecus. Right. So this is sufficient about the discovery of Australopithecus. Then now let us discuss about, or in the next lecture, let us discuss about the anatomical description of Australopithecus. Hello and welcome back. Now let us continue our discussion in the topic Australopithecus. In the last lecture, we discussed about the discovery of Australopithecus. So now let us discuss about the general characteristics of Australopithecus along with its anatomical description. As I told you, Australopithecus lived somewhere between 4 to 2 million years ago. This is roughly. Okay. So there are two types of Australopithecus. One is gracile and the another one is robust. Gracile is a short and a slender form of Australopithecus. Short and slender, while robust is a gigantic form of Australopithecus. One is short and slender, and the another one is gigantic. These robust were strictly vegetarian. On the other hand, the gracile were omnivorous. Omnivorous means they eat both meat, fruits and nuts, tubers, they hunt animals, etc. So how do we know that the robust were strictly vegetarian and gracile were omnivorous? So by studying the molars, we get some idea about their food habit. Most of the vegetations like fruits, tubers contains silica. And silica is capable of creating large-scale attrition in the teeth. As a result, the molars of robust shows a greater wearing pattern. If you look at the molars of robustus, a greater wearing pattern, wearing down of teeth. On the other hand, this was not the case with the molars of the last three teeth, molars of gracile. In ecological sense, we can call robust as a specialist, and gracile as a generalist. Specialist means they have a very narrow range of food habits. They just eat only very few food items. By generalist, they have a wide range of food habits. If fruits are not available, they can rely on meat. If meat is not available, they can rely on tubers. But that is not the case with the specialist. So robust or specialist, they had a very narrow range of food habits. They were strictly vegetarian. On the other hand, the gracile were omnivorous. That's why we call them as generalists. They have a wide range of food habits. Along with that, robust were gigantic. They are large and massive when compared to gracile. Gracile is a short and slender form of Australopithecus. So I told you that the Australopithecus lived somewhere between 4 to 2 million years ago. Until 2 million years, there were no much issues for the Australopithecus. But towards the end of, or towards the beginning of this 2 million years ago, there was a change in climate. A very cold weather started gripping, a very cold climate started gripping the earth. That is the return of Ice Age. As a result, there was a change in ecosystem. There was a change in vegetation. And there was a gracile, right? They started facing food shortage. Sorry, it's robust. Robust were generalist, right? So robust started facing food shortage. There was some scarcity of resources for the robust to survive. On the other hand, gracile, as they were omnivorous, they were capable of surviving somehow by eating meat or hunting something. They can eat something and they can survive. At the same time, as a very cold climate started gripping the earth, gracile, because it was short and slender, it managed to run very fast. It managed to hide itself in cracks and crevices to protect themselves against the very cold weather. But that was not possible for the robust. Hardly it could run fast, hardly it could climb a tree to collect fruits. And it made life very horrible for the robust. As a result, this robust form of Australopithecus started vanishing from the environment. And at some point of time, they became totally extinct. and it was this gracile form of Australopithecus which got further evolved into Homo habilis. This Homo habilis got evolved into Homo erectus, and it is from this Homo erectus, or it is the Homo erectus which got evolved into Homo sapiens. Into Homo sapiens. Okay, so as robust was specialist, it couldn't adapt to the changing climate and the changing environment. But on the other hand, Gracile somehow managed to adapt to the new environment, adapt to the new climate, and it further got evolved to live under the extreme climatic conditions. So it is the gracile form of Australopithecus which got further evolved into Homo habilis. Okay, so as I told you, there are a number of important species in Australopithecus. We have Australopithecus ramidus, Australopithecus anamensis, then we have Australopithecus afarensis, then Australopithecus africanus. Somewhere by around 1992 to 94, these fossils of Australopithecus ramidus were discovered. And once when these fossils were discovered, it was named as Australopithecus ramidus. But later it was found that the collection of these fossils, right, belonging to this particular cultural phase or this particular evolutionary phase, they were a bit more primitive when compared to that of Australopithecus. The cranial capacity was around 300 to 330 cubic centimeters. So later this Australopithecus ramidus was renamed as Eridipithecus. Eridipithecus ramidus. So these four are the very important gracile species of or gracile type of Australopithecus. We also have Paranthropus. Paranthropus robustus, Paranthropus boise, and later, right, even this Paranthropus were renamed as Australopithecus. Even if they mention as Australopithecus robustus or Paranthropus robustus, both are synonyms only. Both refer to the same genus only. Okay, that means later even the Paranthropus genus was included in the Australopithecus genus itself. These two refer to the very important robust species, while these are the very important gracile form of Australopithecus. Gracile form of Australopithecus. Okay, fine. Now let us discuss the cephalic features of Australopithecus. Cephalic features of Australopithecus. Okay, cephalic, by cephalic we refer to the head region, head and skull. By cephalic we refer to the head region. Okay, so let us discuss few very important cephalic features of Australopithecus. The first important thing is the cranial capacity. Cranial capacity. The last lecture we have discussed what we mean by cranium. Cranium refers to the collection of bones which covers or which envelops the human brain. The human brain. So it is composed of number of bones, and I told you in the evolutionary perspective it is important or it is essential to know at least three important bones here. One is the frontal, the next is the parietal, and the third one occipital. Frontal region, parietal region, and the occipital region. We also have the temporal region. This is this one, right? This is temporal. And we also have this sphenoid bone and the ethmoid bone. There is no need to bother about those two things. If you are okay with frontal, parietal, and occipital, that is much more than sufficient. Frontal, parietal, and occipital. So cranium. So by cranial, this is what cranium is. And the other bones, right, these are facial bones. So this is a zygomatic bone, this is zygomatic arch, this is the lower jaw is technically called as a mandible. I'll come back to that after some time. The upper jaw is called as a maxilla. These are facial bones. Okay. So I hope you're comfortable with the frontal, parietal, and the occipital. So by cranial capacity, just by cranial capacity, we refer to the capacity of the cranium to hold a brain. Indirectly, this refers to the size of a human brain, a size of the brain. So the cranial capacity of Australopithecus ranges roughly between 400 to 530 cc, cubic centimeters. So this is just 1/3 the size of human brain. Our cranial capacity is roughly around 1500 cc. But see, it is just 1/3 the size of human brain. But when compared to the other Miocene apes, Miocene, this is the geological period in which the Australopithecus lived. Or when compared to the contemporary apes, this brain size shows a greater development. And the development is largely in the parietal region. This is parietal, right? Here, this parietal region. Here we have the cerebrum. Only the enlargement of brain here, these are the regions known for sound production. These regions of the brain is associated with sound production. And the development of brain in this particular region in Australopithecus suggests that Australopithecus might have had some sort of verbal communication. They might have shouted at least, or they might have used some sort of words to communicate. And there is also some enlargement of brain in the cerebellum. I hope you will be comfortable with the regions of brain like cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla oblongata. Even an 8th class kid will be comfortable with these terms, right? Okay. Cerebrum is the forebrain, cerebellum is the hindbrain, and medulla oblongata just below that. So the development of brain in the cerebellum allowed Australopithecus to make very fine body movement during locomotion. Even while running, they can take a stone and they can throw it on some other animal. They can just carry a sharpened wooden pole with them, and if they find any animals, even while running, they can throw it on them. This is evident from the development of brain in the cerebellum. So got it? So the development of brain, see, there is an enlargement of brain of Australopithecus, and this enlargement is largely found in the parietal region. So the parietal region where we have the cerebrum, right? These are the regions meant for sound production. are associated with sound production. So the development of Australopithecus brain in this region suggests that Australopithecus might have had some sort of verbal communication to speak and to communicate. And the development of brain in the cerebellum allowed Australopithecus to make fine body movements during locomotion. And one more thing I forgot to tell you, the development of brain in cerebellum also allowed Australopithecus to make fine manipulation using hand. They can use the fingers now to make tools, to make finer objects. Correct? Fine then. So the next is other cephalic features. Receding forehead and the presence of sagittal crest. See here, this is the skull of a human being. So here, look at the forehead here. See how the forehead is here. Forehead is the seat of intelligence. But for Australopithecus, the forehead used to be sloping like this. So it is during the course of evolution, the brain started developing and we got the straight forehead. So for Australopithecus, forehead is sloping. For most of the primitive apes, even for Homo erectus, even for Homo habilis, the forehead used to be sloping like this. Next is sagittal crest. Sagittal crest refers to a ridge-like bone on the top of the head. So this is the cranium, right? On the top of the cranium there will be one a ridge-like bone. I'll show you in another picture. So this one, this ridge-like bone on the top of the head, right? This is called as sagittal crest. So what is this sagittal crest? What is the purpose of this bone on the top of the head? Is this totally absent in human beings? No, this is not completely absent in human beings. So in the course of evolution, this bone became thinner, thinner and thinner. And it is almost completely absent for most of the human beings. But even now, the Alaskan Eskimos, they have some small rudimentary form of or minute form of this sagittal crest. This sagittal crest, right, it provided attachment area for few muscles. Attachment area. So on a bone, a muscle gets attached, we know that. But a muscle cannot attach to the bone in each and every place. So there are some specific regions in the bone where the muscles gets very tightly attached. So in every bone we can see some rough patches. And these rough patches are meant for the muscles to get attached. Suppose if you are a non-vegetarian and suppose if you eat a leg piece of a chicken, you can always see that towards the end of the one side of the bone, right, here in these patches here, we can see we cannot pull that meat out very easily when you eat. And once the bone dries, sometimes if you see that bone, right, we can see some rough patches here, but this area will be very smooth. So these are the attachment areas in the bone. Similarly here, this sagittal crest, it provided attachment for few muscles called as masseter and the temporalis. So these are the two muscles, masseter and temporalis. So these are the muscles meant for the jaw movement, biting and chewing. We know that now most of the meat which we eat, right, it's almost like a piece of bread. But on the other hand, the Australopithecus, they ate raw meat. They had no idea of making fire. Homo habilis were the first to make fire, and even Homo habilis had no control over fire. It was Homo erectus which first had some control over the fire. That means how we can make a fire and how they can restrict that fire within a particular place. Within a particular place. So that's why it's Homo erectus started using fire to cook food, to roast the meat. But on the other hand, Australopithecus, they were forced to eat raw meat, hard nuts, and some fibers. So for that, they need to have a greater masticatory apparatus. That means they need to bite, and chew the meat to a greater extent. So for that, they were in need of extraordinary muscles. This masseter and temporalis, right? It was so huge. These two muscles were, and these muscles used to get pulled further at the top of the head, and these muscles used to get attached here in this sagittal crest. In sagittal crest. So sagittal crest provided attachment areas for the muscles. But in the course of evolution, when our ancestors started eating processed food, you can say from the period of Homo erectus, there was no need to have this extra or the large muscles, because there is no need to bite and chew the food to a greater extent. So the masseter and temporalis, these two muscles started becoming smaller and smaller. And with the passage of time, there was no need for, or the functions attached with the sagittal crest vanished. So there is no need to have that sagittal crest. And with the passage of time, it became smaller, smaller, and smaller. And it is almost absent in the human beings, but still in a rudimentary form, at a microscopic level. This bone is found among the Alaskan Eskimos, the Eskimo who live in the cold Arctic region of Alaska. Got it? So are you comfortable with the term sagittal crest? So sagittal crest refers to the ridge-like bone on the top of the head of Australopithecus. Sagittal crest. So next is supraorbital ridges. Supraorbital ridges. Orbits. By orbit, we refer to this opening, which earlier held the ice. These are orbits. By supraorbital ridge, we refer to the ridge-like bone which is found on the top of Australopithecus. This ridge-shaped bone found on the top of the orbits. We call this as the supraorbital ridge. So what purpose did this supraorbital ridge serve? See, just now I told you that Australopithecus need to bite and chew their food very hard. So this extraordinary biting and chewing by the lower jaw is technically called as mandible. It will leave a stress in this bone. This biting action, the biting action of the lower jaw will leave a stress in the forehead. And if these bones are weak, these bones may crumble because of the extraordinary biting and chewing process. So the supraorbital ridges developed as a reinforcement in this region. So this is found as a reinforcement in the forehead to protect the bones from crumbling because of extraordinary biting and chewing. And once again, with the passage of time, when the need for biting and chewing declined, and there is no need to have a very rod like a very tough supraorbital ridge. So the supraorbital ridge started vanishing over time. So with the passage of time, the supraorbital ridge became thinner, 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 and for us it is almost completely absent. And both the things, both sagittal crust and the supraorbital ridges were very prominent and very thick in robust. And it is slightly thin in the case of grey seal. Comparatively, it is smaller and thinner in grey seal. Are you comfortable with the term supraorbital ridge? Okay then. So supraorbital ridge is a reinforcement in the forehead region to prevent the bones from crumbling because of the extraordinary biting and the chewing activity. Okay. Next is prognathism. Prognathism means a protrusion of the oral cavity forward. You can see in this picture, right, we can feel as if this oral cavity is being projected forward. This is largely because of 2-3 reasons. The first and foremost being a large and massive mandible. Mandible refers to the lower jaw, and the upper jaw is called as maxilla. Also note down for Australopithecus, there will be no chin. Chin is completely absent. See here, for human beings, the bone will be like this. There is no curve here, there is no chin for Australopithecus. Even the chin later developed when in the course of evolution, when the mandible became thinner and thinner. And even it should not become weak, right? So the curve developed largely as a reinforcement here to make the bone bit strong. So mandible is very large and massive for Australopithecus because it need to bite and chew raw meat, hard nuts. In the course of evolution, this mandible became smaller and smaller. So the very large mandible, along with that, the nasal bridge. This is the nasal bridge. For us, the nasal bridge is being projected forward. This particular bone here is the nasal bridge. Is being projected forward. But for this primitive apes, for Australopithecus and Homo erectus, this nasal bone is depressed like this. See, the nasal bones are depressed and the oral cavity is being projected forward. As a result, the face of Australopithecus looks concave. So prognathism is because of a large and massive lower jaw, that is mandible, and the flat and depressed nasal bridge. So because of excessive prognathism, the face looks concave for Australopithecus. Next is the foramen magnum. In anatomy, if you say foramen, this refers to a opening in the bone. So foramen magnum, there are a number of openings in our bone. In the skull, we have two very important openings. One is the foramen magnum. This is foramen magnum. You can see here, right? This one is the bottommost portion of the skull, in which the lower jaw has been detached. Lower jaw has been detached. Okay. So this is a foramen magnum. So foramen magnum is a opening through which you can see brain continues as a spinal cord through this opening. There are also other opening like jugular foramen. Jugular foramen is here. This is the jugular foramen. It is through this jugular foramen, right? The jugular vein which carries blood to the brain, it passes through that foramen. But come back to foramen magnum. See where the foramen magnum is placed. Foramen magnum is more posteriorly placed, not posterior actually, more centrally placed in human beings. But in the case of the primitive apes like Ramapithecus, Dryopithecus, okay, this foramen magnum used to be placed more posterior. When the animals had a quadrupedal locomotion, quadrupedal, that means walking using all the four limbs. You can have a look at a dog if you have a pet in your home. So for them, for the face to get projected, the foramen magnum will be here. And the vertebral column will just have a single arched one. And in the course of evolution, when our human ancestors, when they descended from the trees and they were forced to walk on the earth, when they were forced to walk, even Australopithecus was the first human ancestor to have a terrestrial life, a terrestrial habitat. The foramen magnum slowly, gradually it declined, and it had reached this particular position. So the presence of a foramen magnum or the more centrally placed foramen magnum signifies an erect posture and a bipedal locomotion. So this is one very important evidence to show that Australopithecus were bipedal and they walked using two legs. And their forearms were free, which they used it for hunting or making tools, etc. So apart from this, right, we can also see other features like these are occipital condyles. So condyle is an attachment portion of a bone. This bone, right, gets attached to the backbone, the vertebral column. Okay, occipital condyles. So the more prominent occipital condyles again suggest that Australopithecus had an erect posture. Okay, so these are the very important cephalic characters of Australopithecus. Cranial capacity around 400 to 530 cc. Sloping forehead. Presence of sagittal crest. Then prognathism, concave face, and more centrally placed foramen magnum. And supraorbital ridges. Supraorbital ridges were very thick and prominent in Australopithecus. Got it? Fine. Hello and welcome back to the lecture in Australopithecus. In the last two lectures, we have discussed about the discovery of Australopithecus and the cephalic characters of Australopithecus. Now, in this lecture, let us discuss about the dentition of Australopithecus and the post-cranial anatomy of Australopithecus along with its locomotion. So, teeth and dentition. In paleontology, the study of teeth reveals much information about the biological and cultural aspects of the fossils which we are studying. By studying the teeth, we will be in a position to understand what they ate and what the environment was like. And it is by studying the dentition only we were in a position to understand that robustus were purely vegetarian, and gracile were omnivorous. And further, we also know that because of the gigantic proportion of the robust, it couldn't adapt to the changing climate, to the changing environment. Good. So, the study of the dental aspects of Australopithecus reveals a number of information. It is a mix of both ape-like and human-like characters. There are few characters in the Australopithecus dentition which are truly human. At the same time, there are also few primitive characters. Let us study this now. Okay? Few important aspects of few important dental aspects of Australopithecus. The lower jaw is technically called as mandible. Mandible, as I told you, mandible of Australopithecus is very large and massive. It was large and massive because there was a need for Australopithecus to bite and chew the raw meat, hard nuts, and some fibers, etc. At the same time, the jaw was chinless. Absence of chin was a very important feature of most of the apes' mandible. So just remember, even when you draw a diagram of any ape, draw the diagram of the skull of any ape, make it sure that you will not add a chin here. It is only from Neanderthals chin started developing. So absence of chin is a very important primitive character of most of the apes. Absence of chin is a very important primitive character. So then later, why chin developed? So the food habit of Australopithecus, as we know, right, there is a need for them to bite and chew their food a lot. As a result, they had a very large and massive mandible. But with the course of time, when our ancestors like Homo habilis, Homo erectus, when they started eating processed food, the need for a huge jaw declined. And the jaw became thinner and thinner in the course of evolution, thinner but stronger, thinner but stronger. So when they bite and chew, automatically there will be a stress in the chin region. To make the bones here further stronger, chin developed as a reinforcement here. So chin, right, it developed only during the later stage. And absence of chin, as I told you, is a very important primitive character. Even in Australopithecus, chin is absent. Chin is absent. Then parabolic dental arcade. So by dental arcade, we refer to the shape of the arrangement of teeth. For human beings, the dental arcade is parabolic shape. Parabola. It is a graph, right? Parabola used to be like this. For chimpanzee and even for few primitive apes, dental arcade used to be U-shaped. U-shaped. But for human beings, it is parabolic. For Australopithecus also, though it is not perfectly human-like, but still it is not U-shaped like the primitive apes. It shows some tendency towards the parabolic shape, and this is very much truly a human character. It is mainly because of this character we have included Australopithecus in the line of human evolution, the parabola shape of the dental arcade. Fine. Next, absence of simian shells. Simian shells. So what if there is a shelf, what we will do? We will keep our books there, right? In a shelf. So simian shelf means there was a bone which developed in the lower jaw which made it look like a shelf. This bone used to extend like this. As a result, right, this place looks like a shelf. This we call it as simian shelf. And simian shelf is a primitive character. In Australopithecus, simian shelf is absent. And this is one advanced character of Australopithecus. Absence of simian shelf. Then why 5 cusp pattern of molars? So what is a cusp? In a teeth, right, on the topmost portion of the teeth here, we can see some bulges. So these bulges, right, these are called as cusp. Okay. In premolars, there will be 2 cusp. And in molars, there may be 4 or 5 cusp. So here, you can see the way in which the molars were arranged, right, it shows a primitive character. So for human beings, on the topmost portion of the teeth, there will be 5 cusps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this. But for the primitive apes like Dryopithecus, lived some 7 million years ago. This Dryopithecus had Y5. They had 5 cusps, and the cusps were arranged in a Y shape. It used to be like this. Just so we can see. It's like this. So this type of arrangement of cusp in the molars, as I told you, in premolars there will be 2 cusps, and in molars there may be 4 or 5 cusps. Okay. So the way in which the cusps are arranged in the molars of Australopithecus shows a primitive character. It is similar to that of the Dryopithecus. It is like a Y shape. This we call it as the Y5 pattern of the cusp of Australopithecus. Then absence of diastema. This is one very important character. So diastema, this refers to gap in between the teeth. So for most of the primitive apes, they had a huge diastema between the incisors and the canines. Because for primitive apes like Dryopithecus, Ramapithecus, Simapithecus, they had large tusk-like canines. Incisors will be followed by canines, and these canines will be tusk-like. And in the lower jaw also, the canines used to be tusk-like. And when they open the mouth, or when they close the mouth, they need to lock the teeth, right? For that, there will be a gap between the teeth. This gap is called as diastema. In Australopithecus, diastema is absent. It means that canines were not tusk-like. It was only slightly projecting. It was just only slightly projecting. What does this signifies? This signifies that Australopithecus, unlike its ancestor, it didn't use the mouth for hunting and gathering. Earlier, most of the apes used to be arboreal. Arboreal means living on the trees and not on the ground. And they should live by brachiation. Brachiation means jumping between branches and branches. And in this process, all their four limbs will be used for mobility, will be used for locomotion. So they were forced to use their mouth for hunting and collection of fruits or tubers. So for that, their canines used to be very large and it used to be tusk-like. But with the passage of time, Australopithecus started walking on the ground. In fact, Australopithecus were the first terrestrial ape. They were bipedal. And when they started walking on the ground, their forearms became free. That means they have stopped forearms for locomotion. They didn't use that forearm for locomotion. The forearms became free and they started using the forearms for making tools, for hunting and for collection. As a result, the need for the tusk-like canine declined. And for us, right, the absence of diastema in the fossil indicates this condition. Indicates the condition. So these are the very important dental characteristics of Australopithecus. I hope you are comfortable with this. Large and massive mandible. So mandible means lower jaw. Lower jaw is very large and massive because there was a need for them to bite and chew. At the same time, the mandibles are chinless. That is a very important primitive character of Australopithecus. So this is your primitive character. Then this Y5 pattern of cusp, right? That is a primitive character. On the other hand, the parabolic shape of the dental arcade is an advanced character. It is a human-like character. The absence of simian shelf in the mandible, in the lower jaw, again is the advanced character. And even the absence of diastema. The absence of diastema reveals so many information about Australopithecus. So these are the very important dental characters of Australopithecus. Hello everyone. In this lecture on Australopithecus, let us discuss the postcranial features of Australopithecus. Postcranial, that means all the important anatomical features found beneath the head. By all probability, Australopithecus were bipedal. The savanna-like vegetation in which they lived forced them to walk on the ground. Earlier, Earth was gripped by, or not gripped by actually, a rainforest-like vegetation prevailed in most of the tropical as well as subtropical regions. So in a rainforest, we know about the canopy, multi-layered canopy, thick undergrowth, and even at the ground level, there will be 1 to 2 feet of decomposing foliage. So trees will be found in multi-layered canopy. Okay, different layers of trees, very dense. At the same time, there will be large scale defoliated leaves here, and there will be no much time for the leaves to decompose. Even before the leaves decompose, there will be defoliation. So always there will be some 1 to 2 feet layer of decomposing foliage. And reptiles will survive so comfortable in these, snakes will be there. It will be very difficult for animals to move on the surface. So prior to Australopithecus, when such an environment prevailed, most of our ancestors were strictly terrestrial, strictly arboreal. So that means they were forced to live on the tree branches. And soon there was a change in environment. This rainforest type of vegetation was replaced by a savanna type of forest. In a savanna type of forest, trees will be there, but trees will be scattered here and there. That means there will be no continuous stretch of dense vegetation or dense trees. And we know savanna lands are grasslands. So because of this change in the environment, Australopithecus were forced to climb down from the trees, move down from the trees. And this new environment forced them to walk on the ground. At the same time, they need to spot the carnivores. So every time they need to climb. And it is this right which gave Australopithecus the bipedal locomotion and almost a semi-erect posture. Bipedal locomotion. So by all probability, Australopithecus were bipedal. And the savanna-like vegetation in which they lived forced them to walk on ground. So apart from this, there are number of anatomical evidences which again suggest that Australopithecus were bipedal. These are more centrally placed foramen magnum. Earlier we have discussed by foramen, we refer to a opening in a brain. We discussed about foramen magnum earlier. So foramen magnum is here. This is the opening through which brain further continues as the spinal cord. There are also other foramen, like we have this jugular foramen here, through which the jugular vein passes. But that doesn't have any evolutionary significance. But the position of foramen magnum here, it implies a number of evolutionary significance. It has evolutionary significance because when the human ancestors were quadrupedal, quadrupedal means walking on 4 legs. The foramen magnum is more posteriorly placed, and the vertebral column used to be single arched like this. Single arched vertebral column. But slowly in the process, when we got erect posture, and it didn't happen overnight, it took few million years for the human ancestors to get the erect posture. From quadrupedal, slowly, gradually, and finally we got this erect posture. It took few million years. And in this process, the foramen magnum slowly declined, and finally it reached this particular position. Even for Australopithecus, the foramen magnum is more centrally placed. It implies that Australopithecus had an erect posture and a bipedal locomotion. This is one first very important evidence. The next is the presence of curve in the lumbar region. See, as I told you, when the human ancestors had quadrupedal locomotion, foramen magnum was more posteriorly placed and vertebral column used to have only one arch. Only one arch. In the course of evolution, when we got erect posture, this foramen magnum declined and it became more centrally placed. And when it is centrally placed, and if the vertebral column continue to remain like this, it cannot bear the body weight, and some weakness may develop here, and maybe in the course of time the bone may crumble or bone may break at some places. To prevent that, in the course of evolution, our vertebral column became multiple arched. So that the weight can be balanced at many places. It can be balanced here, it can be balanced here. And it provides some sort of a stability and strength to the backbone. So the multiple arched vertebral column is called as anticlinal vertebra. Anticlinal vertebral column. What is that anticline? So in geography you might have read about fold mountains. Himalayas is an example for fold mountains. So in your fold mountains, the upstanding portions are called as anticline and the low-lying portion is called as a syncline. Just because like this we also have a fold in the vertebral column, this multiple folded vertebral column is named as anticlinal vertebra. So though human beings have a perfect curvature in the vertebral column, that is not the case with Australopithecus, because evolution was still operating on this species and the vertebral column was not perfectly arched like this. So the vertebral column, right, the topmost portion, this is called as cervical region. We have close to around, we have 7 plates here, that individual bone, plate-like bone. Then this is the thoracic region, and the last 5 one, right, the 5 plates, these are called as lumbar plates, or the lumbar region, where we have 5 plates. We call it as L1, L2, L3, L4 and L5. Below this lies this sacrum or sacral bone. There is no need to worry about this cervical, thoracic and this sacral region, because we won't deal much about this thing. But try to remember this lumbar region alone at least. So among Australopithecus, though there is no perfect curvature, but the backbone or the vertebral column shows some sort of curvature in the lumbar region alone. In the lumbar region alone, there is a curvature. It shows that Australopithecus is evolving to reach a perfect erect posture. So Australopithecus, though it was bipedal, it didn't have a perfect erect posture. But the evidence for bipedal locomotion is yes, though the vertebral column is not perfectly arched, there is a curve in the lumbar region of the bone of Australopithecus, lumbar region of the vertebral column of Australopithecus. Then next, presence of torsion angle for the femur bone. Torsion angle. See here, this bone, the way in which this bone is attached. This angle, right, we call it as the torsion angle. This bone is not straight like this. Had the bone be straight like that, then the entire body weight, right, will straight away fall on the knees, and that will put lot of pressure on the knees. To prevent that, there is an angle here. This angle is called as torsion angle of the femur bone. It is again a weight bearing modification. It may act like a spring. When there is more weight, right, this bone can twist something to some extent so that it can bear the body weight. So it is one way to prevent the excessive body weight from falling on the knees, because knees need to be very stable. Correct? So, but though there is a curvature in the torsion angle, knees are straight. They have straight knees. Okay, but torsion angle is present in the femur bone. So the presence of torsion angle again is an indication to show that Australopithecus had a bipedal locomotion. Then bowl shape of the pelvis. See, for animals with quadrupedal locomotion, pelvis used to be plate-like. As I told you, when the animals had a quadrupedal locomotion, the pelvis used to be plate-like. So because the function of the pelvis is to hold the organs in the stomach, to give some stability to the organs in the stomach, intestine, liver, etc. And once when the same organism in the course of evolution, if it gets erect posture, and the pelvis further continue to remain plate-like, it will not serve any purpose. It will be vertical. So in the course of evolution, pelvis became bowl-shaped. And even Australopithecus had a bowl-shaped pelvis. This is a very good example to show that Australopithecus had a bipedal locomotion. Okay, fine. So next is presence of linea aspera. This linea aspera is present only in hind limbs. So linea aspera, right, this refers to a small groove. This is a groove developed in the posterior side of femur bone. Posterior side of the femur bone. Femur bone is there in the thigh region, you know this, and this is the largest bone of the human body. Fine. What is the need for the femur to develop these grooves? This actually provided attachment areas. Attachment surfaces for the muscles in the thigh region. When the human ancestors had quadrupedal locomotion, the entire body weight was balanced by the forelimbs, both forearms and hind limbs. And when they got erect posture, now just two limbs are going to balance the entire body weight. At the same time, in the course of evolution, right, even our human ancestors became larger and larger. When compared to Australopithecus, Homo habilis were a bit larger. When compared to Homo habilis, Homo erectus were slightly larger. And we human beings are larger than Homo erectus. Okay, fine. So now just two limbs or hind limbs are going to manage the entire body weight. To maintain this body weight, or to manage the body weight, to balance the body weight, some extra muscles developed in the abdominal region, in the back, in the thighs, etc. So there is a need to have some extra attachment areas for the new muscles. So this linea aspera developed in the femur bone mainly to provide attachment area for the muscles in the thigh region. That's why we know, right, there is a huge difference between the muscles in our forearms and the muscles in our legs. We have too much of muscles in the abdomen and the thigh region. For these muscles to get attached in the femur bone, there is a need to have more attachment areas. So in the course of evolution, when from quadrupedal to bipedal, new muscles develop, and to attach these muscles, and for these muscles to get attached, this linea aspera developed. So the presence of linea aspera in the femur bone again indicates an erect posture and bipedal locomotion. Then finally, right, our entire body weight will come and straight away it will come and fall on our ankle. If our entire body weight is made to come and fall in this region, how long this region can bear our body weight? The bones there may break or it may become weak. From 60, 70, 80 kg, right? If it straight away it falls on this one particular bone, that bone cannot bear that weight for a long time. So there were a number of anatomical modifications which happened in the feet and in the ankle, so that our body weight will not be made to fall in a one particular place, but it will be made to radiate into our entire feet. Our weight load, it runs like this. From here, the weight load runs like this, goes down, and it ends somewhere between the greater toe and the second finger. See, you can see number of examples here. The most important is the arching of the feet bones. Arching of the feet bones. This is a very important weight bearing modification. So for some people, right, even now this arching may not be proper, so they may have flat foot. If somebody is having flat foot, that is a disqualification for uniform services like Indian Police Service, Indian Revenue Service, Customs and Excise, etc. Okay. So even for Australopithecus, they had a number of modifications here, like the arching of the feet and how the weight load gets radiated into the feet. And all these modifications are found only in the hind limbs. On forearms, in the wrist and the bones were as usual. No much change here. Again, this symbolizes Australopithecus had an erect posture and bipedal locomotion. Got it? So these are the anatomical evidences to suggest that Australopithecus had a bipedal locomotion. The first important thing is foramen magnum is more centrally placed. Then there is a curve in the lumbar region of the backbone. Pelvis is bowl shaped. Linea aspera is present in the femur bone. Once again, torsion angle is also found in the femur bone. Knees are straight, and there are number of weight bearing modification in the feet and in the ankle. And these modifications are found only in the hind limbs. This suggests very clearly that Australopithecus were bipedal and they had an erect or semi-erect posture. One thing for sure is their forearms were free. They didn't use their forearms for locomotion. Though Australopithecus had a bipedal locomotion, the bipedal locomotion of Australopithecus is not like that of human bipedal locomotion. There is a difference actually. This is largely because of the absence of these muscles. Most importantly, this gluteus, medius and gluteus maximus. This muscle is gluteus maximus and this is gluteus medius. And we also have gluteus minimus which will be behind this muscle. So these are the muscles which actually stabilize our pelvis when we walk. The muscles found in the back. It is because of these muscles, right, we can stand straight, we can walk casually. But for Australopithecus, these muscles were totally absent. And one more thing, the ischial tuberosity or the ischium bone. This is that ischium bone, the one in the green color. This bone generally it used to be very long for the animals with the quadrupedal locomotion. But for Australopithecus, this bone still remained very large. As a result, Australopithecus had a jog trot like locomotion. So jog trot means they cannot stand straight and they cannot walk like human beings. They'll be standing with bent knees and bent hip. And they cannot walk continuously. They were capable of making only some quick short steps. Maybe some 4 step, 5 step at a time, tuck, 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 some 5 step. Then they need to stand. Take a breath, then walk. So this type of locomotion is physiologically inefficient because this consumes large amount of energy. So they need to eat a lot because for walking right, it consumes a lot of energy, Okay, fine. So are you comfortable with this now? As I told you, there are a number of anatomical as well as ecological evidences to show that Australopithecus were bipedal. But the bipedal locomotion of Australopithecus is different from that of the locomotion of human beings, largely because of the absence of 2 muscles, gluteus medius and gluteus maximus, and the presence of a large ischium bone. As a result, Australopithecus had a jog trot like locomotion. Thank you.